There are moments in life you replay in slow motion, wondering where exactly you lost control. For me, it was a Tuesday afternoon in late September, in a dusty auto shop on the edge of town, when a woman in grease-stained coveralls looked up from my engine and delivered the sentence that would change everything. "Your engine's dead, sweetheart, and the fix costs more than the car's worth." I stared at her, then at my poor, faithful Honda, the one I'd named Biscuit because it was round and dependable and smelled faintly of old coffee, then back at her. "Dead?" I repeated. It was running fine yesterday. It made that noise, sure, but cars make noises. That's their thing. Ruth, that was the name stitched in faded red over her pocket, wiped her hands on a rag that had clearly given up on being clean years ago. She was maybe 10 years older than me, with steady eyes and the calm certainty of someone who'd seen 1,000 broken things and fixed most of them. "Biscuit's not making noises anymore. She's making a death rattle. Timing chains gone, cylinders scored, and honestly, she's been holding on out of spite." Ruth patted the hood almost tenderly. "I respect the spite. But spite doesn't pay for parts." My stomach dropped. I'd just spent my savings on a security deposit for an apartment I could barely afford. My job at the diner paid minimum wage plus tips, and tips had been cruel lately. I did the math in my head, and the math laughed at me. "How much?" I whispered. $3,000, give or take. Maybe more if we find surprises, and we always find surprises. $3,000. My car was worth maybe $800. Every dollar I had was earmarked for rent, for groceries, for the electric bill I was already 3 weeks behind on. I felt the world tilt, and for one mortifying second, I thought I might actually cry right there in front of this stranger. "Okay," I said, voice cracking. "Okay. Thank you for your time. I'll figure something out." I turned to leave, already planning the walk home, 4 miles uphill in shoes that had a hole in the left sole. I'd made it 2 steps when Ruth's voice stopped me. "Hey, wait." I turned. She was studying me the way she'd studied the engine, like I was a puzzle with a loose wire somewhere. "You got a job?" "I work at the diner. Tips are—" "No, I mean, here. You need the car fixed. You can't pay. I need a hand around the shop. My last guy quit last week, went to work for his cousin's landscaping business. Pays better, apparently. Landscaping. Can you believe it?" She shook her head. "I'll tell you what. You work for me 1 month, full days on your days off, evenings when you can. I fix Biscuit. We call it even." I blinked. "I don't know anything about cars." "That's adorable. You'll learn. I don't even know the difference between a piston and a screwdriver." "Nobody does until they do." Ruth shrugged. "Look, you're clearly broke. I'm clearly desperate. And Biscuit here is clearly not going anywhere. It's a terrible business decision for both of us, so it's probably the right one." I should have said no. I should have thanked her and walked my 4 miles home and figured out some other way. But there was something about the way she said it, like she genuinely didn't care whether I said yes, like she'd be perfectly fine either way. That made me want to prove her wrong. "Deal," I said. Ruth smiled, and it was the first real smile I'd seen from her. "Welcome to the shop, new girl. First lesson, never name your car. You get attached, and then you're in here crying over a timing chain." "I'm not crying. You're about to." She wasn't wrong. Day 1, I learned that Ruth's shop, Ruth's Auto and Repair, painted by hand over the door, with a wobbly wrench that looked like it had been drawn by a kindergartner, ran on a very specific system. Ruth did everything, and everyone else just tried not to break things faster than she could fix them. "First rule," she said, handing me a pair of coveralls that smelled like motor oil and ambition. "If you don't know what a tool is for, don't pick it up. Second rule, if it's leaking, It's probably important. Third rule, coffee's in the back, and it's terrible, and I'm not sorry. Got it, I said, pulling on the coveralls. They were 2 sizes too big and made me look like a blue balloon with arms. What do I do first? Ruth pointed at a car on the lift, a battered pickup truck with a bumper sticker that read, "I'm not old, I'm vintage." That's Mr. Hendrix's truck. Needs new brake pads. I'll walk you through it. What followed was the most humiliating hour of my adult life. I learned that brake pads are not, in fact, shaped like pads. I learned that a lug wrench has a very specific job, and that job is not hitting things to see what happens. I dropped a socket into the engine bay and spent 20 minutes fishing it out with a magnet on a stick, while Ruth watched with the patient expression of someone observing a very slow nature documentary. "You're doing great," she said, completely deadpan. I dropped a socket. That's why we have the magnet stick. Everyone drops a socket. It's a rite of passage. Did you drop one? Ruth's eyes flickered. I dropped a whole ratchet into a transmission once. Took us 3 days to get it out. My mentor still brings it up at family dinners. That was the first time I heard her mention anyone from her life. I filed it away, curious, but didn't push. She didn't seem like the kind of person who appreciated being pushed. By the end of week 1, I had learned the difference between a piston and a spark plug. One moves, the other sparks. I still mix them up sometimes. Successfully changed my first oil filter, with only moderate screaming, and developed a deep, irrational respect for Ruth, who could diagnose a car's problems just by listening to it idle for 10 seconds. "You hear that?" she'd say, cocking her head. "That's a worn bearing. Sounds like a grumpy cat." "I don't hear anything." "Exactly. That's the problem. It's too quiet. A healthy engine has a certain personality." "You're telling me engines have personalities now?" "Everything with moving parts has a personality. Cars, people, relationships. You just have to learn to listen." I was starting to suspect Ruth had a lot more going on under the hood than she let on. But every time I got close to something personal, every time I asked about her family, or why she'd never mentioned a partner, or what she did on weekends, she'd find a reason to disappear into the back room or suddenly remember a customer who needed a callback. "Boundaries, new girl," she'd say, not unkindly. "I fix cars. I don't do therapy. Everyone needs therapy. Then everyone should pay for it. I'm not licensed." Week 2 brought my first actual disaster. A customer brought in a sedan with a mysterious rattle, and Ruth, busy with a transmission job, handed me the diagnostic manual and said, "Figure it out. You're the mechanic now." "Ruth, I've been here 11 days. "You've been here 11 days and you've already learned more than most people learn in a year. Go. Trust yourself. If you're wrong, we'll laugh about it later." I was wrong. Spectacularly wrong. I diagnosed a loose heat shield as a failing alternator, ordered a $400 part Ruth had to cancel, and spent an hour under the car covered in grease, apologizing to a piece of metal that did not care about my feelings. When I finally crawled out, covered in black grime, hair plastered to my face, Ruth was standing there holding 2 cups of that terrible coffee. "Alternator, huh?" "I was wrong." "I know. I checked before you ordered it." She handed me a cup. "But you know what? You were wrong with confidence. That's rare. Most people are wrong with doubt, and doubt makes you hesitate, and hesitation gets you killed in this business. You'll be fine." I took the coffee. It was terrible. I drank it anyway. "You're not mad?" "Mad? I gotta watch you argue with a heat shield for 45 minutes. That was the best entertainment I've had all month." She grinned. "You're doing great, Julia. Really. You're gonna be a terrible mechanic, but you're gonna be a great one." "That doesn't make any sense." "Welcome to the shop." Somewhere around week 3, I stopped thinking of Ruth as the mechanic and started thinking of her as just Ruth. The shift was gradual, then sudden. I noticed things I hadn't noticed before. The way she hummed old country songs when she thought no one was listening. The way she always saved the last piece of pie from the diner for me because she knew I liked it. The way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she actually laughed. A real laugh, not the dry professional one she used with customers. I noticed the way my heart did a small, stupid flip every time she said my name. This was a problem. A big problem. Because Ruth had made her position very clear in that offhand way she had, during a slow afternoon when we were both sitting on upturned buckets, eating sandwiches. "People think I'm lonely," she said, out of nowhere. "Single woman, runs a shop, spends her life under cars. They keep trying to set me up. My sister's been at it for years. And you're not interested?" "Not in that." She took a bite of her sandwich. "I don't mix work with romance, ever. Seen too many good shops ruined by bad relationships. 2 people, 1 business, both hearts on the line. It's a recipe for disaster. I'd rather be alone and solvent than together and broke." I nodded, trying to keep my face neutral while my stomach dropped through the floor. "That's sensible." "It is. I'm a sensible woman." "You're the most sensible person I've ever met." "Damn right I am." But here's the thing about sensible people. They're usually sensible because they've been hurt, and the more I watched Ruth, the more I saw the cracks in her armor. The way she flinched at the word X. The way she got quiet when a certain kind of song came on the radio. The way she'd sometimes stare at her wedding ring finger. Empty, but like she was checking to make sure. I didn't ask. I was learning her language, and her language was, don't push, don't pry, just be there. So I was there. I brought her coffee. Terrible, but I made it with extra sugar the way she liked. I learned to hand her the right wrench before she asked for it. I laughed at her terrible puns and let her win our arguments about which of us was the worst mechanic. It was me, obviously, but she insisted it was a tie. And slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice, Ruth started letting me in. It happened on a rainy Thursday. The shop was empty, the rain drumming on the tin roof, and Ruth was under a car on the lift, working on a brake line. I was handing her tools, kneeling beside her, when she said, very quietly, "My ex left me 3 years ago, took half the shop's savings and my dog." I went very still. "Ruth, don't feel sorry for me. I'm not telling you for sympathy." She slid out from under the car, sat up, and looked at me with those steady eyes. "I'm telling you because you've been looking at me like I'm a puzzle, and I want you to know the answer. I don't do relationships because I did one, and it cost me everything I built. I'm not doing it again. Not for anyone. I started, but my voice cracked, and I knew I was caught. Ruth's expression softened, just a little. "I know you weren't. You've been good to me, Julia. Better than anyone's been in a long time. And that's exactly why I'm telling you this now. So you don't get your hopes up. Ruth, Julia." She said my name like it was a tool she was handing me. Something solid and real. "I like you. I like working with you. I like that you're terrible at this and you keep trying anyway. But I can't be what you're hoping for. I'm a broken engine, and I don't think I'm worth fixing. I should have let it go. I should have said okay and moved on and finished my month and gotten my car back and walked away with my dignity intact. Instead, I said the stupidest thing I could have said. That's funny. Because I'm pretty sure you're the one who told me everything with moving parts has a personality. And you're the one who said a healthy engine just needs someone to listen. Ruth stared at me. For a long moment, neither of us moved. You're quoting me at me, she said finally. I'm learning from the best. That's a cheap trick. It's working though, isn't it? Ruth shook her head, but there was something in her eyes, something that looked almost like hope, fighting to get out. You're a menace, Julia. I'm a mechanic in training. There's a difference. Not much of one. She went back under the car, but I saw it. The smallest smile, tugging at the corner of her mouth. And I knew that whatever wall Ruth had built, I'd just found the first crack. The last week was the hardest. Not because the work was hard, I'd actually gotten decent, in my own chaotic way. I could change oil without crying. I could identify a worn belt by sound. I'd even fixed Mr. Hendricks's brake pads, and he'd tipped me $5 and called me a natural, which I'd been riding high on for days. No, the last week was hard because Biscuit was almost done. And when Biscuit was done, my month was over. And when my month was over, I had no reason to come back. I found myself dragging my feet, taking longer on jobs, making excuses to stay late. Ruth noticed, of course. Ruth noticed everything. But she didn't say anything. She just let me linger. And I think that was her way of saying she didn't want me to go either, even if she'd never admit it. Then, on the second to last day, everything fell apart. I was under a car, a customer's sedan, just a routine oil change, when I heard Ruth's voice, sharp and cold, from the front of the shop. "I told you I'm not interested. Please leave." I slid out from under the car, wiping my hands, and found a man standing in the doorway. He was tall, well-dressed, with the easy confidence of someone who'd never had to work a day in his life. And Ruth was standing between him and the counter, arms crossed, jaw set. "Come on, Ruth," he said, in a voice that was trying to be charming and failing. "It's been 3 years. I've changed. I got my life together. I just want to talk. 3 years ago, you took half my savings and my dog, Gary. You can keep the savings. I want my dog back. I don't have the dog anymore. He ran off. But that's not the point. The point is, you need to leave before I call the cops." "Ruth, be reasonable." "Ruth doesn't need to be reasonable," I heard myself say, stepping forward. "Ruth needs you to leave. And I think you should listen to her." Gary turned to look at me, and his expression shifted from charming to dismissive in half a second. "And who are you? The new grease monkey?" "She's my employee," Ruth said, stepping in front of me. "And she's right. You need to go." Gary's eyes flicked between us, and something ugly crossed his face. "Oh, I see. You found a replacement. Younger, too. That's cute, Ruth, real cute. But we both know how this ends. You don't do relationships. You're too broken for them." "Get out," Ruth said, and her voice was shaking now. "Get out of my shop." Gary laughed, a mean, dismissive laugh, and turned to leave. But at the door, he looked back. "You know I'm right. That's why you're so angry. You're a defective engine, Ruth. Nobody's ever gonna fix you." He left. The door swung shut behind him, and Ruth stood there, perfectly still, her hands clenched at her sides, not making a sound. I didn't think. I just crossed the room and wrapped my arms around her. She stiffened. "Julia, shut up," I said, holding her tighter. "Just shut up for a second." For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, I felt her arms come up around me, and her head dropped to my shoulder, and she let out a breath that sounded like she'd been holding it for 3 years. "He's wrong," I said quietly. "You're not defective. You're not broken. You're just a car that needs a little work. And that's okay. Everyone needs a little work sometimes." Ruth laughed, a wet, shaky laugh against my shoulder. "You're really committing to this metaphor, huh? I'm a mechanic in training. It's all I know." She pulled back, and there were tears on her face, and she was smiling, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "You know," she said, "you're the only person who's ever made me feel like I might be worth fixing. Because you are. You just needed someone to listen. Julia." She looked at me, and there was something new in her eyes, something soft and scared and hopeful all at once. When I said I don't mix work with romance, I meant it. I meant every word. But I think I might have been wrong about one thing. What's that? I said I don't do relationships because I got hurt. But the truth is, I don't do relationships because I'm scared. Scared of getting hurt again. Scared of losing everything I built. Scared of... She trailed off. Scared of what? Scared of letting someone in and finding out I can't love them the way they deserve. I reached up and wiped a tear from her cheek. Ruth, you fixed my car when I couldn't pay. You gave me a job when I had nothing. You taught me that a broken engine just needs someone to listen. You've been loving people the way they deserve your whole life. You just didn't notice. Ruth stared at me for a long moment. Then she laughed. A real laugh, bright and surprised, and pulled me into another hug. You're a menace, Julia. I'm a mechanic in training. Same thing. The last day came, and with it, Biscuit, fixed, polished, purring like a kitten. Ruth had done more than fix the engine. She'd given the old Honda a full tune-up, new tires, even a little air freshener shaped like a tree that smelled like vanilla. She's ready, Ruth said, standing back to admire her work. Good as new. Better, actually. I gave her a little extra love. I ran my hand over Biscuit's hood, feeling the smooth, clean metal. She's beautiful. Thank you, Ruth, for everything. Don't thank me yet. Ruth pulled an envelope out of her pocket. I have something for you. I opened it. Inside was a piece of paper, a receipt, with a total at the bottom that had been crossed out and replaced with a single word. Paid in full, with interest. What is this? It's your bill. You paid it. 3 grand's worth of labor plus interest. Ruth smiled. You worked harder than anyone I've ever hired. You earned it. Ruth, that's not... I didn't do 3 grand worth of work. I dropped a socket in the engine bay. You dropped it once. You fished it out with the magnet stick. That's worth at least 500 right there. I laughed, and then I was crying, and then I was hugging her, and she was hugging me back, and neither of us wanted to let go. So, I said, pulling back, I guess this is goodbye. Guess so. I'll miss you. I'll miss you too. We stood there, in the dusty shop, with Biscuit purring in the background, and the afternoon sun slanting through the windows. And neither of us said the thing we both wanted to say. Finally, Ruth cleared her throat. You know, I've been thinking about what you said, about broken engines needing someone to listen. And I think I might be ready to let someone listen, if that someone is still interested. My heart did that stupid flip again. Ruth, are you asking me out? I'm asking you if you want to come back tomorrow. Not as an employee, as... She trailed off, and for the first time since I'd met her, Ruth, the calm, unflappable, sensible mechanic, looked nervous. As something else, if you want. I pretended to think about it. I don't know. I'd have to check my schedule. Your schedule is working at the diner and being terrible at cars. Exactly. I'm very busy. Julia. Yes, Ruth? Will you come back tomorrow? I grinned. I'll come back today. I'll come back every day. I'll come back so often you'll get sick of me. I doubt that. Ruth smiled. And it was the real smile, the one that crinkled her eyes. I've got a feeling you're going to be around for a while. She was right. 6 months later, I was still there, not as an employee, but as something better. I'd learned to change my own oil, to diagnose a worn belt by sound, to hand Ruth the right wrench before she asked. I'd also learned that Ruth snored, that she was secretly terrified of spiders, and that she made the world's worst coffee but the world's best pancakes. And on a warm spring evening, standing in the shop with grease on our hands and the sunset painting everything gold, Ruth looked at me and said, "You know what? I think you were right." "About what?" "About everything with moving parts having a personality. About broken engines just needing someone to listen." She took my hand, her fingers rough and calloused and perfect. "You listened to me, Julia. When everyone else just heard a broken engine, you listened. And you fixed me." "I didn't fix you, Ruth. You were never broken. You just needed a tune-up." "Same thing." "No, it's not." I squeezed her hand. "A tune-up doesn't change what you are. It just helps you run better. You were always a good engine. You just needed someone to believe it." Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed and pulled me close and kissed me. Right there in the middle of the shop, surrounded by wrenches and oil stains and the smell of terrible coffee. "Best damn tune-up I ever had," she said. "Same," I said. "Same." And that's the thing about broken engines, I guess. Sometimes they're not broken at all. Sometimes they just need someone to listen, someone to believe in them, someone to hand them the right wrench at the right moment, someone to stick around long enough to hear them purr. Biscuit still runs. I still work at the shop. And Ruth, the sensible, unflappable, secretly soft mechanic who swore she'd never mix work with romance, still makes the world's worst coffee. But now she makes 2 cups.